What's going on, guys, and welcome to the first episode of the comic Sanctorium. I'm your host, the sorcerer and master of the mystic and cosmic arts. So, my name is Emilio Marty, and I really want to welcome you guys to my page. On this page, we're going to be talking about comic books, video games, and a whole bunch of different array of pop culture and really just cool things. Things that I find awesome, and I hope that you find awesome as well. So let's get it started, and let's just take it back to the 1990s and really just sit down and talk about animation and cartoons from the 90s and why I think they're better and why I think they really need to come back. So back in the 90s, we had a huge wave of different cartoons. We had Spider-Man, we had Spawn, which is one of the most badass cartoons of all time. Todd McFarlane, if you ever get a chance to watch this, please bring it back. I'm dying. I want to know more and I want to see more. I think it was the best option forever to be able to sit down and watch not only a gruesome and badass superhero come alive, but really was a great way for just a viewer basis for people like myself who just weren't able to read comic books at that time to be able to actually watch a comic book. I diverge. So that was just the Spawn series, as I'm going to be talking about a lot of these animations a lot. So that's why on this episode I really wanted to bring it to you right off the jump. Other options you had is the X-Men animated series was fucking amazing. Batman animated series and any sort to follow, the Batman Beyond series, are always so near and dear to my heart because they were one of the big things that got me into being the person I am today as a comic book collector and such a huge fan of all of these things. When I say that, I mean Kevin Conroy's Batman, to me, will always be the greatest Batman of all time. You can put Robert Pattinson in with this new movie. And guys, the new trailer just came out for DC Fandom, and it looked phenomenal. Actually, really, really good. The only big problems I actually have with it, I don't like his hair. I mean, it's really the only big problem I'm having with it so far is the fact that when he comes out and he punches the villain in the face and he beats him down to a bloody pulp on the ground, and you have the crew of the other gang members just staring at him being terrified of who the hell is this guy. That was such a good staple piece. That's who Batman is. Batman is not the Justice Friends guy who we're all just, that's Batman and he saves the day and we're all going to be friends in the end. No, Batman is a ruthless, almost psychopathic kind of superhero who really plays on that fringe of, is he a superhero or is he almost a villain on himself? So with that being said, that new movie does look good. Once again, I diverge. But back to the animated series. So lately I've been rewatching the Spider-Man animated series from the 90s. It's on Disney Plus. If you do have Disney, guys, go onto the Marvel section and really watch it. If you have kids, make them watch it, because if they love the Tom Holland movies and the Marvel Universe, the Spider-Man universe in that series is so well done. It's almost perfect. And I say almost very, very lightly. The Batman series was the greatest in my opinion because that series actually went and rewrote the comic books. They literally brought out characters that they killed off in the DC universe and brought them back for that universe. And that's amazing. So Mr. Freeze was originally known as Mr. Sub-Zero, or Mr. Zero, and he was actually killed off real early because in the comics people didn't actually like him. It was very played out and just kind of, he had a freeze ray, Batman saved the day, end of the day, you know what I mean? So when they brought that storyline back in the actual animated series, it was phenomenal because they gave him a badass backstory. He's not really a villain. You feel sympathy for him. You feel sympathy for all of the villains throughout that series. And what is amazing is the fact that when they did that, they broke ground so hard that they really went and said, okay, let's talk about this and let's bring him back. Let's make him a villain, but keep this story. And the same thing for other villains across that threshold. And that's why I love the Batman animated series so much. But like I was saying, I've been rewatching the Spider-Man series and just trying to touch basis on each episode and really taking it into, because I haven't seen this really since I was a kid, and now I'm 29, and I'm even more in depth with my knowledge of characters and who they are. And what makes that series so amazing to me was when I'm watching it, the character basis is accurate. And I think in today's movies and standards, we're all losing this basis of everything. It is so, we're gonna make a movie, but I'm gonna be the director and I'm gonna rewrite it to my liking. And I think because of the fact that Stan Lee and actual comic book writers worked and produced this is what made it so much better. If you sit down and you watch, just for example, the episode where Morbius comes out. I mean, Morbius is he's a badass villain, but not really a villain, vampire, and you see that come through, and you see him come through. Then you carries over into where Blade enters, and you have Blade's backstory, and Blade's backstory is accurate. And to me, as a fan of these movies and comics and episodes and shows and all of these things, accuracy is where I want. I don't want to see a director come out of left field and say, I'm going to write Fantastic Four the way I think the Fantastic Four should be done. Because it shouldn't be rewritten. As a fan of the actual comic book, all I want you to do is open that book, take the image that's there, and project it onto a live action screen or an animated screen. And when these series went through and actually did that, to me, those were the best adaptations, and they were so groundbreaking that today I binge watched the X-Men animated series, and I still love those voices. I still hear Steve Bloom's voice, and I watch and read comics in, let's say, Kevin Conroy's Batman. When I'm reading the newest issues of DC Comics or anything like that, I'm reading the voice of those actual characters. I met Phil LaMarr a while back, and I actually got the chance to sit down and really have a conversation with him. And if you don't know who Phil LaMarr is, he's actually the voice of Samurai Jack, who just dropped a video game which looks dope as hell. I still have to get down and play it. I will, I promise. But he also does the voice of Jon Stewart in the Justice League series, and his voice, when he radiates through and says, "In brightest day, in blackest night," it touches to a part of your body where you're like, holy shit, this dude, I'm watching this cartoon, knowing this is a cartoon, and even as a kid, knowing this was a cartoon, and going, this guy, he's saying it with such a beautiful passion, and it touches to your soul, where it says, holy shit, I feel that he really is trying to absorb that power through the ring and really try to actually save the day. And that was such a good way that it carries over, and it stuck so in depth with me as a adult now, that, like I said, I read these comics and go, I'm reading your work in your voice. And you're like, you had nothing to do with this comic. You didn't write it. You didn't do the artwork. You didn't do anything. But what you did is, as a child, you created your legacy of your voice is now forever the voice I read that in. And to me, I think that's one of the coolest things about it is those cartoons forever will always be. I will always hear Phil Lamar as Jon Stewart. I will always hear Kevin Conroy as Batman. And you can give any Batman any time and any place, but to me, Kevin Conroy will always be Batman, regardless of what you do. Christian Bale played a great one. Everyone always loves. For myself, it's Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton to me was the live action Batman, but even going back and watching those movies, I'm still sitting here watching Michael Keaton play a perfect one. But in my head, I'm still hearing Bruce Wayne / Batman as Kevin Conroy. And I think that's what's so brilliant about those animated series is not only were they groundbreaking as a actual comic and brought us out of it, but it just really was such a perfect introduction. If you don't read comics, if you don't know anything other than just what the movies give you, the animated series and animation of those comic book cartoons was so perfect as a fan, as a child, and like I said, as of today, I'm sitting always going back and rewatching them and say, to me, this will always be the best adaptation of the comic books of all time. I love the live action movies. I love them all to death. You'll learn through this page that I am one of the biggest Doctor Strange fans out there. I worship that man. And in the Spider-Man series, when they have him actually show up and he's in his Sanctum Sanctorum and he's got the cloak of levitation. I mean, his outfit in that is perfect. It is exactly stripped from the comic book onto the page and onto the screen. And then you have Wong is still in it, and Wong shows his martial arts skills, and even Doctor Strange shows his martial arts skills, which is very slept on. I mean, hands down, he's not one of the best of hand-to-hand combat, but he was trained by some of the best. Even Iron Fist himself has had a time where he's trained with Doctor Strange in hand-to-hand combat and has acknowledged his actual skill. So to be able to see that portrayed correctly on a big screen, on an animated screen, it's amazing. I love comic book accuracy. I love the fact that when a animation and an animation cell is sat down and drawn up to such an accuracy and the references are correct, it's what's amazing to me. So like I said, if you guys haven't really sat down and watched it, download Disney Plus and Thrust, get onto YouTube and just, or whatever streaming site you can get. If you don't have the DC app or like there's please download them, guys. Or go out to your local Walmart, Target, find the Batman animated series, the Batman Beyond animated series, and sit down and have a binge watch. Because next time you go and you actually watch a Batman movie, after watching those, you'll have a better understanding of certain things and certain villains, and you'll have a bigger heart for the actual series. Because the age-old question for Batman is does Batman make the villains or do the villains make Batman? And I'm a firm believer in the villains make Batman. And the reason I say that is because of that series, you have such a sympathy for who the villains are and what they bring to the table. They're essentially us if one thing just went wrong to that extreme point and we took it to the next level. Really, besides the Joker, there's no villain in there who just you don't feel sympathy for. The Joker is the Joker. He just wants to see the world burn, and he just wants to have a laugh. And that's what makes him the ultimate Batman villain. But at the same time, if you're sitting here and looking at it like I said for Mr. Freeze, he's just a guy who's in love with his wife and will do anything at any cost to save her life. She's cryogenically frozen in his tank, and he will do anything to save her life. And I mean, guys, at that point, can you blame him? He just is a man at the end of his ropes who just wants to save his wife. And you can look at, the Clockmaster. Here's a guy who's always punctual, always on time. And the one time that he's late, his entire world gets ripped apart. He goes from being a successful man to having nothing, and all because he was late one time, and his mind was so wire tight that when he was finally late, he snapped. It's unbelievable, because the stories are so relatable, and that's why I believe the villains in the Batman series are what make Batman. They are what make him, and without them, you have no Batman. You just have this almost borderline villain, like I said earlier, who is just running around in a spandex suit, punching dudes in the face and stopping crime, which is great, for all the billionaires out there. Why don't we have one of you guys out there? Come on, Mark Cuban, throw on some, spandex suit and start fighting crime. Why aren't you doing it? You should be. But at that same point is, why can you relate to Batman and Bruce Wayne as much as you can relate to some of the villains? I think you can relate to some of the villains a little bit more, and that's why the villains to me will always make who Batman is. So with that being said, guys, this is just a quick little episode. I promise you I will be bringing more. I've really been struggling to, get out and get this started. To my friends and family who have been supporting me from the beginning of me talking about getting out here and just talking to you, thank you. I told you I was going to do it. I promised you I was going to do it, and here it is. Here's episode 1. Thank you for being here. To anybody who's new, thank you for checking me out. Please like, subscribe, share, bring it to your friends. We're here.